there are people who get a lot of money from the community fomenting medieval stories about right and wrong based on a struggle between God and the devil, and they're not the least bit ashamed of it. They took control of the media empire with the assassination of Kennedy for the axis in a droll story where Jesus' power saved Hitler, and Hitler came back as Lazarus, the friendly ghost, or Casper, they call him, in a food fight to prove Hitler's philosophy that everything was a struggle to the death, that the weak must die, as Peter Gabriel put it. Well, the leading players of the Carousel Club were, of course, the Broadway musical Hair. They came out in Pittsburgh, where God's spell was created. So Hair was conceived as a devil's spell. And you could either be a holy warrior and go to Vietnam to kill the gooks, as they were called, and side with Lyndon Baines Johnson's war machine, and thus get a pat on the fanny because he signed Kennedy's Civil Rights Act, for which he got credit. And Trump came the civil rights movement to wipe their feet where he once stood. And Hair was the devil spell concept that for the devil worshippers who resisted the war. And they were sent into inhuman conditions in Holocaust survivor conceived experiments by Ellsberg and Chomsky. I was brutally tortured and gassed and given a nerve agent. And once they had me plastic, as they called it, they used me for recreational sex and then pretended to weep out, you don't care about us when we gave you Nini. And the parochial, of course, does like this. Because Gore invented the internet. It's a Sodom and Gomorrah show. People look at porno, and they the people who claimed that they were representing the future this way, because after all, we have to do something to protect ourselves from climate change, and they've internationalized hatred for the United States and insouciance about inhuman cruelty towards someone who's American and so on. You know, mutilation, using me for these experiments, and then saying, "Well, you got the old in out." This is the mind of Roger Waters at work. They used attack, prostitution. So anytime the queer bait needed a place to sleep, they would find a woman who, if he because the women would get on the phone and say, "Is this guy one who will eat you out if you give him a bit?" And the women had this whole network in place for passing me around as a deaf. They're calling it I'm the Walrus. So and they planned to pin the tail on the donkey, as Kidsburg put it. Kidsburg put it that way. They and pretended John Lennon had died, which is obviously not true. He was in on this thing. It was a fourth dimensional Houdini show by the media who plotted it. They had me on the set. It was like Blazing Saddles, where the set starts to fall and you can see behind it. And they've been working on this. Access Hollywood has been working on this since World War One. The brainiac of it was Henry Bergson and Blythe Sanders. They, Italians, Marinetti, who was working with D.W. Griffith and Mussolini. So these were the fascist hooligans of cinema, just putting on a story show. And Lennon was the starring role because everybody, after they killed Kennedy, he was regarded as number one. They still use Luke 16 as worship of this And you're supposed to say that Lenin wasn't the devil, even though he was the one who got all the lemmings going with sex, drugs, and rock and roll. He was the holy father. So I mean, it's really twisted BS. It's really sick. Flame Over Africa by Todd Clark, who held me in custody, imprisoned me, as they put it, um, was doing covers for Yoko Ono. He did Flame Over Africa, which demonstrates the Environmental Modification Convention violation that these zombie worshippers in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, came up with for the fossil fuel industry. Godspell was part of the fossil fuel conglomerate that these Holocaust survivors brainstormed. It was like a Nancy Reagan, my turn show, my turn, and it was the women's turn to have a sex slave. And the point is that they did use me as a sex slave. And they have Neva Corporation attorneys saying, what's the best way to induce a guilt trip so that we can get his property through the grapevines? And the Black Panther gets on the line and says, play like he hurt your feelings. So the Black Panther says, play like you hurt your feelings. And then he goes downtown to Hakeem Jeffries and Bruce Harrell and says, he hurt her feelings. He hurt her feelings. And they poison you in the mouth and release COVID because you're a double crosser who doesn't support CIA activities in the Ukraine. And Hakeem Jeffries is going to crush those anti-Semites in Syria. Boom! You just give him a chance, he'll crush them anti-Semites. And this is they call liberalism. They hate liberalism. Liberalism are these do-gooders who want to crush anti-Semites in Syria. You send your children to these liberal schools where they get molested, right? And you're supposed to, and that's dialectical, the molestation of children, shall we? Oh, they have all these stories, these stupid stories of, women who leave their diaphragms out in frat rooms, and then they say the queer masturbated in the sock, and that means we get the money, and they turn immediately to Michael Reagan's favorite seats and more. Michael Reagan dug ferociously into a neuroplasm, ferociously demanding digging in the dirt. I mean, he used Peter Gabriel's suction tube to extrude. Dig, we want the dirt. We want the dirt. And they said I was hiding a rape in Rapid Eye Movement. It turned out I was kidnapped and tortured, and they had frozen up. And they wanted more. They wanted more. So they get to this scene in Peaceport. It's like 9 years old. They're bukkake me in my sleep and painful. They said it was mayonnaise, but it was obviously something else. So Mike Reagan's like, ooh, he wants his favorite scene. He won't stop for anything, and Hakeem Jeffries will crush anybody who doesn't give Michael Reagan his favorite scene some more. And they would do like this. Donald Finnegan would do like this to me. He was like 6 feet tall when I was in fourth grade, and I would be. And they say, "Oh, it's because you're a sissy." And they hit me from behind. They kick me in the head. A whole gang of them with arms, weapons, knives, pipes, and beating me senseless, bringing my brains in because you're a sissy. And Dr. Proctor calls it Pittsburgh's provincial standard. Pittsburgh's provincial standard. That's Pittsburgh's provincial standard. And they're gonna pin the tail on the donkey is what they're gonna do.